Well, hello everyone. I'm here to show you right here of this Word document right here that I was able to find talking about right here of a Word document where I was able to write out and type it, and like anybody probably want to know too that if you were to think about that, where almost anything that you're going to be writing about, or if it's maybe for any documents that need to be written, whenever it comes to taking care of writing a cover letter or maybe a promotion on a job, or it could also maybe be something that's related to tax information or something like that. But this right here is a document that and I wrote talking about for business at your service, and it's another way of how to for to explain about a promotion really, but it's just like a like if I'm going to include like any sorts of hashtags or something like that on a resume, then I would include something like this to where say business at your service, and this right here talks about right here that we can say busy all the time, but what about that the job application and whenever the situation comes, and I'll go and read this right here. Whenever a situation comes to applying for a job, when an employer hires that person for the job, what that person is looking for is the most, you know, most of the time is experience, despite about what positions that are available. That busy is a short term for your business at your service that I came up with. So yeah, that your way of telling our customers that that you are willing to help them further with what is needed, especially if you have any if you have the knowledge about showing the company what is it that you do, and for how something works, and so we would agree to to only take the job opportunity when the job descriptions are explained, and in the ships you are very flexible, and so this is just another way of how you would want to write a story, and like anybody probably say too that if you want to go ahead and maybe a message to the hiring team, and maybe send them an email, like any sorts of personal email or something like that that you want to coordinate with the hiring team. But it sure seems that way that talk about for technical failures or anything about like any sorts of job assessments or anything like that. But really, that's really what I'm talking about right here. Of talking about for whenever it comes to talking about like I don't know about maybe too much about journal writing or anything like that. But do you think that it would really help toward it whenever if we're going to be studying about job researches, and a lot of times it's like yeah, if you want to go and just type a document to explain to somebody that if you are hired for this job, how would you handle the situations to where if you were working a job and you came up to these problems and any concerns from the clients, and then for the customers, if they had a question about something, what would you do? What would your interactions be? And so if you just want to like yeah, like a kind of like a positive and narrative situations, and I don't know if like everybody else will probably say too that if it was actually read like on a transcript, and if you want to go ahead and show it to somebody and have them review over that document, and just to ask them that what exactly okay were these the scenarios that you came up with, are these the scenarios that you came up with, such as what if this situation happened, and so a lot of times, if you're going to be applying for a job, that how many managers are going to be really be asking you to do something like that, about how, or if you're familiar with a certain situation, how would you handle that? And so it sure seems that way. That like almost everything else, yeah, that you read it on paper or read it on a document. And by the time you actually go there, and then by the time that situation comes, and like everybody else will probably say too, that a lot of the companies, they're not really going to understand what I'm talking about until they actually see, until that situation to where that somebody sees what what I was talking about. And so a lot of times the situation kind of goes by as to where they yeah, and most of the time that's usually the situation. So I'm like everybody else might even say that, well, really, if you want to go ahead and change the writing just a little bit toward the type of language that you want to use. And let's just say that if I were to maybe set this to where that it would not be anything that's related to about maybe Times New Roman, or maybe like any other source of font that I would be using. But still, but if we're talking about that, like a document or anything like OneNote, any notes or any comments that you would want to write down. And a lot of times too, that a lot of managers would probably be asking for that to promote somebody. And a lot of times you're likely thinking too is to where that whenever if you're going to be if somebody's going to be going over a review with you, and they're going to maybe warn us toward it, well, if it helps just to talk out just a little bit about what the problems were, and if you want to go ahead and write a scenario, you think of some good, positive, and a conclusion to where what solution can you use to fix the problem, and in case if you run into the situation. So it seems like to me that it's another way, it's another, I guess, narrative about how to be able to get your training. And let's just say that if you were just kind of write it out and just write out what your concerns are and what what's the situation is. And so like everybody else will probably say too that not everybody really has time to read all the details about the situation whenever it comes to what's on your mind, what's concerned, and also any other questions about a situation that comes up, for a job or anything else that you're working on. And so it's like, so this right here, that we can see this right here, that the business that you're serving. So that for what's the between the verb and then the noun, and then also the beginning of a sentence or whichever. But still, that whenever I was working on this, I actually was thinking too that just write something just to kind of better explain about what business at your service means. It's another way of how to coordinate, how to communicate with other clients. So my people I talk to, whenever they ask me that, whenever a person asks me that how do you respond to a situation to where if you are offered a position, if you didn't, somebody came across your resume on your profile, and then that person reached out to you, and so how would you respond to that? And I would usually say something like, well, really, that business at your service, because whenever we're going to be busy on a job, that it sure seems that way. That busy basically means that do not disturb, do not bother me right now at the moment. I'm not even at the I'm not even on the phone right now at the moment, or anything that you want to talk about. And so it's like, most of the time busy basically means is that you don't really have time right now to go over that data. You don't really have time. Well, if you're in a meeting, you're talking about something. And so a lot of times it's like, busy means that that person does not have time to look at your resume, or if you don't have time at the moment to take care of that, whichever. And but still, that I don't know if I want to call it a little bit of the opposite so far as busy. Could you put that a little bit the opposite to where that you want to use busy as a phrase toward that you'll go ahead and set time at later on point. And so a lot of times everybody else might even say too that we have that habit of saying busy about almost all the time, to where at the time it seems like that. How do you know whenever somebody could be ignoring a work in process, or anything like that, or it could also be related to about maybe if you forgot to take care of something from earlier or something like that. But really, I just if the applicant was originally hired to work on in an office as an office assistant. So a lot of these sentences right here, if you could see this right here, are really all about the fact about that whenever you do apply for a job, that yeah, it sure seems that way, that the application should only take about between a couple of minutes to maybe a half an hour to complete the application. But at the same time, you want to know too that yeah, well, a lot of these employers may want to buy more of your time, and so they're going to ask you to complete an assessment, and then maybe if you do get notified about a job opportunity, and so a lot of times it sure seems that way that what I do. Well, what I do want to talk about is a statement is about my resume, and the resume would explain about what I do, but also stating that I can do a number of these skills in 12 hours period. So yeah, that if you're going to be going to a job interview or anybody that you're going to be talking to about something, and it sure seems that way that really, is it really recommended to go ahead and write like a cover up a document explaining about what would you do during the situations to where if something went wrong, if there was any source of failure in the process, or what do you think that you would take the time to write a scenario to where just in case that there's a situation that comes up, how would you be prepared to handle that situation? So it sure seems that way that yeah, that between what's the worst thing that can happen, whichever on the job, but still, that where is the worst thing that can happen? And for sure that people say that if you see something wrong, to speak up, but still that at the time it sure seems that way that whenever it comes to a scenario though, and whenever it comes to any sorts of job training, that people may want to know too that really that they would maybe this reader would maybe have to understand what is it that the letter is trying to say, what is it that you're talking about. So at the time it's like, yeah, you go ahead and write a letter like this right here, and it's going to maybe say something like, yeah, well, yeah, something like if there was a scenario about maybe parking privileges or something like that, or maybe license agreements or something like that, or maybe promotion for a job, or in case if something goes wrong or something like that. But like anybody else will probably say too that if you're going to be taking, you take at least a half an hour, like every month. It's like I would say that maybe if anything, I would maybe recommend anybody will probably say that, like every month, go ahead and just write a document about, being prepared to where in case that there was a situation that went wrong, how would you handle that? And so a lot of times with any sorts of job interview, that not very many hiring managers ask me that question. So that's why it sure seems that way. That if you want to give a suggestion to where that how would you handle a situation to where that whenever something goes wrong, or anything about how to fix how to solve a situation, but still that I just really think too that yeah, well, people, you really just had to be there just to realize what was really going on during the time, but still that I just really think too that whenever it comes to jobs though, that whenever you're asked to complete a task, or whenever people ask you for favors and ask you to fill this out or fill that out or read something to them, and that's whenever you're probably thinking too that, well, that's not really my job, or yeah, well, I'll look at it later on, whichever, but still. But I just really think too that whenever it comes to jobs though, that yeah, I guess putting your priorities first, and also think about the other, you know, uh, important responsibilities also about the job. But I just really think too that a lot of employers are going to probably be asking that same question toward what really what can you get done in 12 hours, and what has been approved from the 3 weeks of training. So let's just say if you're going to be entering a training session, and find out as to where that what have you experienced during the whole training period and all that. And so yeah, so it's like from whenever you first started, And it sure seems that way that, whenever you do run into those most complicated situations. And like I say, that, yeah, well, it was a lot harder than what I expected it to be. And so it's like, I'm sure that there's anybody else might even say that whenever you do apply for a job, that it's not always an easy task, just to be able to do something. And if you feel very comfortable with it, and also pretty confident with the people that you're working with, and that's another important topic, to talk about, is that how well that your coworkers know you and your work and all that. But I just really think too that whenever it comes to understanding what all that you gotta do, whenever it comes to, in case of a failure, or in case of a situation to where, a misunderstanding, or if it's about you, what do you think that I could do better, whenever it comes to learning new things. And so quite a few times that I've been to job interviews, and I was not really asked, those questions too much of the time, other than on the job assessment. That not very many times, and I'm asked that question. So a lot of times it sure seems that way, that most job assessments would ask, okay, what would you do during this situation? And so that's why it's like, any sorts of narratives, so your positive and negative thinking, and want to know too that, well, this is what I would do. And but still, that whenever you do, whenever you register for an email address, especially whenever you register for a profile page, that a lot of employers, even third party, a lot of times, even third party, that people are going to be looking over your profile, and that their request may not have anything to do with what you were trained to do. And so that kind of it rings. I'm like, that kind of rings the bell, like, about what you're familiar with, so far as that, about the job opportunities, and want to know too that if you're qualified, to do that job. And but still. But on the other hand, though, it sure seems that way, that like anybody probably say too, that whenever you do register for an account, follow up with your email, a lot of times it sure seems that way, that a lot of information, a lot of that data is not yet released until until that person is able to follow up with you. And a lot of times, like, it's over the phone most of the time. Over the phone, or over chat. Live chat with somebody that the job recruiters, that they're gonna probably be telling you that well, we don't have all the information about what your experience is until we go over your review. And a lot of times, I honestly think too that I just think that's just a little bit more. That's just more time. And some people may say that, well, I kind of think that that's a waste of time too, because that's not really, if you don't really have the right training, then that may not even apply to you, for what you studied, and for what you were trained to do. And let's just say if you were transferring, if you were going from one position to another, and you don't really need that to where that you're being contacted by this company or this business, and they're saying that we came across your resume. Well, I even say too that some of these employers, why is it that they can't say something like, that we came across one of your projects and we want to give you a promotion. I'm like, at the time, I hardly ever hear that. And I tell people too that your resume. I'm like, well, your resume. I'm like, your resume could say something like, that that the little centipede or something like, your resume could say something like, experience with babysitting or something like, babysitter, or but still that so a lot of these hiring teams, a lot of times it's like, if they're going to be looking at your projects, especially look at the work that you do. And a lot of times I do want to know too that Really, that's what you got that you got your profile there, and then you also have your resume there, just so you can explain to these companies what is it that you do. And at the time, it's like, well, really, that I think a lot of it has to do with coordination by email, also. Yeah, third party coordination by email, and also third party. So that's why it sure seems that way. That yeah, like certain set the filter, but still that I know that whenever it comes to checking your emails, a lot of times I do notice that a lot of times that yeah, well, a lot of your information may not be released yet to these companies until you know until you go ahead and interact and like, oh yeah, reply to their messages. And that could also be a computer automated system that's responding to you. And so a lot of times that's usually the case too. So that's why it sure seems that way, that we all know that putting in an application with a resume, of course, we all know that that's not all really what it takes. Like what it's also about is toward yeah, well, how do you know whenever that you do have an interview scheduled, and how do you know if there's a company out there that's wanting to hire you? And so there's ways that you find out about that. Number one is to confirm like your email address, and also that yeah, that they'll maybe ask you to follow them on social media also. But I just really think too that the first thing that I would maybe more likely want to talk about is are you very flexible with learning and having better having new opportunities with learning new things? Because whenever you do talk to the hiring manager about something, and let's just say that if you just say you only do this and you only do that, that might not show any flexibility toward, okay, if you're capable of working with the customers and the clients there, offered there at their company. And if you say something like that, you only yeah, no, I'm only doing office attendant, or no, I only do the packaging designs, or I only work in the packing and the printing. I only do the printing work, or something like that. Or I only do answer the calls, or something like that. Or I only do this, or I only do that. So a lot of times, whenever you go to those job interviews or talk to anybody about any source of employment, it sure seems that way, that if you're going to say something like, if you're going to have these ground rules and restrictions about what you do, do you think that that's going to decrease, that's going to have a big impact on your chances of getting a job? And let's just say that a lot of times that could be the case. And so that's why it's like, yeah, people may want to know too that if you were to include the word only, then if anything, that you can go ahead and include that. Like everybody say that, yeah, well, yeah, if you're applying for a part-time position, but still, I just really think that if you're going to be applying for a job, most of them are full-time too. Most of them are full-time, and there are some part-time jobs that, but still that. At the time, though, it sure seems that way, that whenever you look at a letter like this, and you're probably thinking too that, well, really, though, that whenever you first heard about the position, you were actually thinking about something else. So you were not thinking about that, what this description's talking about. And, so it's like, yeah, that whenever you read the job descriptions and everything, but still. And I think I was also talking about how to handle that whenever it comes to about whenever companies expect more from you than what you can handle also. So I guess yeah, you can go ahead and, like everybody else would probably say too, if you want to go ahead and write like a little scenario about the job experience. If you're trying to write the manager an email, and just explain to them about if you do take on a new job opportunity working in a new field. And you probably want to know too that about the job opportunity, that yeah, they expected this job expected a lot more from you than what you can give them. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that whenever you first start working on a new task and a lot of that stuff that you're not used to, and you probably want to know too that if you think that's just too much. But I just really think though that whenever you do apply for a job, but still part time and more, like everybody else will probably say too, that there are some jobs that they say that if you want to include the word done on this task or something, but at the time it sure seems that way, that whenever it comes to working on a project or anything that you're going to be working on, that you think that something is done, and then maybe within 3 days later that you find out that nope, not everything is done yet. You still got this to do. And so a lot of times it's like, yeah, you just want to kind of look back and just thinking as toward it, yeah, it's really, if it's really that big of a deal, if it was really that much stressful, just do the job and all the other things that you were asked to do and all that, and just to keep in mind, and half the time it's like that during the whole course of the year, all the stuff that's been going on for during the whole year, that it's like if you just think as to where to go ahead and just write a document just explaining about your experience. And I'm sure people probably say that the times that you've had the meetings with the managers and been able to talk about a lot of stuff, and everybody else will probably say too, I know what you mean. I know what you mean by that. And but still, it's like, yeah, you can't really talk and explain everything, but still. But at the same time, it's like, not everything from what you saw from the job matches with what's on the application. Whenever you look at that application, it seems like, you say those words, oh, I think I can handle it. Oh, yeah, I can handle it. And by the time you actually start, and by the time you actually go into that office and start, coordinating with those job tasks, and then you see, the big picture so far as that, for what all the responsibilities and duties that you gotta do, and a lot of times that you're gonna maybe saying is toward really, why did I take this job opportunity? But still, that I guess really, if it's really about the question about why did you agree to the job offer, or if it's really about is to where that getting to getting familiar with the process, and also bonding with the job. And like everybody else will probably say too, if you're going to be working a job, and let's just say if you've been working for that job for at least 3 years or maybe 5 years or more, and so it's like, yeah, so not everything is going to be easy. And tell everybody too that there's going to be some stressful moments too, but still that whenever you do take on a job opportunity, though, at the time that you probably thinking too that if you really had to be prepared to learning the stuff for what that company does at the position, but then also just to think about that is toward that being flexible, and business at your service. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that the understanding about the whole job process, though, that from whenever you were originally hired, from whenever you first started. But whenever we think about that, toward that we think about the failures that went on, and also about anything that you could do for the better. And so it sure seems that way, that yeah, well, you probably would like to conclude the statement by saying is toward that I gave this the best of my knowledge. And so like anybody say that if you're going to go ahead and write a document, and on that paper that you're going to say that you did the best in the knowledge. And even though while you were working that task that maybe not everything was completed, or if anything that for anything else that you saw about that your situation also, and everybody else would say too, yeah, well, that's usually how it goes. Is that there are a lot of things about the job, though, that you say that, yeah, due to overtime, especially overtime, I got overtime right here. So there's a lot of jobs that are gonna probably be asking you those type of questions. And yeah, if the business starts picking up much faster than maybe expected, if there's more customers or more time is requested, then chances are that that it's going to be that way, to where that that they're going to ask you to work a little overtime. If there's any technical difficulties, or maybe if they're short-handed, like, yeah, until the next person shows up for work. But that's usually what I hear too. But still, so yeah, but talk about for job assessments, and also talking about basic training, essential training. But anyway, yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day.